I finished this book last night. And I spent half the day at work talking about it. My colleague probably hates me. Hi, everybody. I have just read a bunch of really amazing books and I need to talk about them. So I'm back. Last time we spoke, I did a wrap up of all of the books I read in 2024, which was 19 books. And it was a pretty great year. Like, I read a lot of really good books, but I only had 2 5-star reads, which didn't feel like a bad thing. I was very happy with that, but I guess I forgot what it feels like to have a lot of them in a row because I've just had 4 5-star reads and it's only February. So strong start. And naturally, because they were all so amazing, I really want to talk about them. So let's go. Okay, so the first thing I read, I'm just going to go through it really quickly because it was fine. It was Calypso by David Sedaris, and it came out a while ago. Everyone knows David Sedaris is funny. He does comedic essays, basically. It was good. I laughed. I listened to the audio, and there was a few chapters that were live recordings of him in an auditorium, and I thought those were much funnier because you got like the back and forth between him and the audience. But overall, it was totally fine. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. That was like the least interesting of all of them. So I liked it, thought it was good, but let's move along. I gave it a 3.75 in case you're curious. I'm so excited. Okay. First of all, this book, look at it. Look at it. Look at the foil. Look at the foil. Look at the drawings. Look at it. You guys. And that's the artist. It's a graphic novel. Pretty obsessed. I don't even know what to say. It's called Suffrage Song by Caitlin Cass. If you follow my Instagram, you saw me post about 100 things about it. I got this at an amazing bookstore in Chicago called Goblin Market, and it is one of my favorite places. They are a bookstore that sells graphic novels and manga. They have a lounge downstairs where you can do like D&D. They're so nice. They do events. They have chairs, so when you're shopping around and you're like tired and you just want to sit and browse a book, you can. And I found some really great things for a friend there, so highly recommend. Oh, my other favorite thing about that store is that they have stickers on every book, the little owl that is like LGBTQIA+ themed. And so if you're shopping for queer stories, you don't have to ask to be pointed out. Like, it's very obvious and easy to find. So love that. But let's go into the book because it's amazing. Okay. First of all, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It's the story of how women fought for the right to vote in the United States. And yes, it covers different races of women and how that fight was not the same and did not succeed at the same time. There's like a fold out in the beginning of different characters that you'll meet and what time period they were in. I'm so obsessed with this book. My favorite thing about this book is the nuance, because there are so many people who fought for the right for women to vote, and they were problematic in other ways. So maybe they fought for white women's right to vote, but really were against Black women's right to vote, or Black men's right to vote. Or maybe they were just actively very racist, but they were really pushing the fight along. It's hard to view this fight through a present day lens because you don't want to excuse behaviors of people who were really quite racist and cruel, but you also have to appreciate what they did for the fight. And the way that the different branches of this fight worked together and against each other and pushed it along so many fronts is so deftly handled in this book. It is, and I'm not speaking as an expert, I'm speaking very much as like, I have a base knowledge of this kind of thing. Like, I watched Schoolhouse Rock and I'm coming at it from like pretty much a layman's perspective. So maybe there's more that I'm missing, but it is so beautifully handled. And there's a whole introduction of kind of the author's qualms about covering certain people and how to handle it. But it is so gorgeous. There are different, oh my God. So there's different, they talk about, for example, this is the, what do they call it? This type of dress where they like cut off the bottom and they were like, it's so freeing. But then it was kind of hated on by women who were like really into modesty. So the fashion of this movement became very much geared toward dress modestly. So they can't really like be mad at us for our appearance, at least. Like respectability politics, essentially. But there's also beautiful other like pencil drawn art that is just, I mean, it's a beautiful mix. There's like watercolor in here. They cover a few different people. Susan B. Anthony, obviously, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They talk about Fannie Lou Hamer and Mabel Pinghua Lee. It also goes into Zit Kalasha, also known as Gertrude Bonin, who was an indigenous activist, and she was fighting for citizenship. And I just really feel like the whole thing weaves together this tapestry of stories so well, where it's not just like, here's the biography of Susan B. Anthony. I thought it was amazing. The art is gorgeous. I've learned so much reading this book, and it's not all pretty. A lot of it's not pretty. But the whole story, it's called The Haunted History. There we go. The Haunted History of Gender, Race, and Voting Rights in the U.S. And I feel like that just really sums it up. If I could afford to buy 100 of these and stick them in like every little free library and on every street corner in Chicago, I would do that. I can't because it was expensive. But if you get the chance to read this, you should. 5 stars. 5 stars. The only thing I would say, it doesn't take away from the 5 stars, but I do feel like it was a little white woman heavy, or a lot white woman heavy, and I would have appreciated a couple more stories, a little more page space dedicated to women of color. However, I loved it. So I hope you read it if you want to. Okay, next. Oh my God. So I had to follow that up with something light because that was such a tome. Ali Hazelwood does it again. I am not okay. I am not well. Besides the fact that I feel like this is a horrible cover, especially compared to her other covers, I feel like the person who was doing all the really cute covers died, and this was like the knockoff version they like tried to come up with. Kind of hated the cover. However, it's what's on the inside that counts, guys. And oh my God, I love this book. The premise of this book is basically, we know Ali Hazelwood, it's always like women in STEM finding the perfect man, essentially. So the book follows Dr. Rue Siebert. She is, well, first of all, she is heavily autistic coded. I mean, I really think at the point that they were at, they really should have just said it in the book. But I love that into character. And she is a chemical engineer who is basically trying to create and patent a technology to make food last longer because she has dealt with like food insecurity in her life. And she works for this amazing company who has a really amazing, strong, powerful female CEO, and life's going great until she basically does like a quarterly hookup where she meets up with someone to get it on, and then she's good for the quarter. And so she meets up with a guy. They end up not doing anything because some stuff goes down, and come to find out the next day at work, a la Grey's Anatomy, he is part of the company that is trying to buy and take over the company she works for. Oh, I don't even know what to say. It's so good. The guy's name is Eli. Their love is so believable. I want what they have. Like, I want what they have. Oh my God, I'm not okay. The romance, I keep thinking back of what I was saying in my last video about Happy Place and how I felt like it was kind of contrived and forgettable. Not this. Like, it was so believable. I felt like they were meant for each other, like they were real people. It's funny, but in a way that like the characters make sense to be saying those funny things. And the male love interest is also a scientist, so they can talk about science a bit. And it's just so believable that he loves her and that she is like going through her feelings. And there was no like cheap villain. I actually felt like it was well executed, where it wasn't just like, oh, and I'm the bad guy at the end. Like, I felt like it was a little more true to life, that things are not always black and white. There's not always just like one person who's just like, meh, like I'm evil, I'm Wario. Meh. And there was a lot of great side characters who were interesting and funny. So it wasn't just the main couple and then the rest of it was forgettable. Like, it was great. And it just was like very much Ali Hazelwood at her best. I loved it. Also very, very steamy, very steamy. And unlike some of the books I read last year, where actually I'm not putting it in this video because I'm mad at it, but I did just DNF a book very late on where the writing was so bad. The plot was good, but the writing was so bad, where there was some sex scenes and it was so uncomfortable to read because the writing was so bad. But not this. Not this. Ali doesn't disappoint. 5 stars. Loved it. Moving on to the next 5 star. I love books. You guys, I love books. I love them. I'm so... Anyway, moving on. I am not gonna lie to you. I'm surrounded by amazing, beautiful local bookstores. And unfortunately, I did find this under Barnes & Noble. It's sad but true. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. I hate it as much as you hate it. But it's called Chouette. If you have not read this book, you are missing out. I will probably think of this for the rest of my life. Complete left turn from what we were talking about before. It is the most gorgeous, beautifully written commentary on deciding to become a mother or not, or maybe not deciding, and then if you can't make the decision, like the decision will happen for you. And it's this incredible, beautiful, poetic book about having basically, I mean, in a surrealist way, having a disabled child and what that may do to your life and all the wonder it may bring to your life and all the hardship it may bring to your life. And it is surrealist. It's not dealing with anyone in particular, you know, but I just thought it was beautifully handled. It struck a beautiful balance between what I call like chewiness, where like you are like savoring those sentences that are so like beautiful and juicy that you just want to like slowly read it. You don't even want to finish it because it's that good. I'm actually in the middle of one now. Because it's so chewy though, sometimes they're hard to finish because I want to sit there and savor and it's not moving forward quickly enough. And when I do finish those, they're always 5 stars. I think of Bluets as a great example. But this struck a beautiful balance between being really chewy and also very readable. And I got through it in a couple of days, honestly. And I was kind of torn in the beginning of whether or not I should underline it because I don't typically, unless it's like a self-help or something where I might go back, I don't typically mark up my books now that I'm out of school. But I ended up being like, there's too much to remember. There's so many things I want to find again that I'm just going to have to. So the second half of it is like so underlined. I'm like, well, I'm never getting rid of it. So at this point, it's mine. Let me find a couple beautiful passages for you. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you the whole premise of the book. She's pregnant with an owl baby. The baby is an owl. I'm sorry I forgot to say that. You can tell from the cover. Let me just read you the first little passage so we're on the same page, since I clearly cannot be trusted to actually give you like the premise of the book. Okay, this is the beginning. This is the first page. I dream I'm making tender love with an owl. The next morning, I see talon marks across my chest that trace the path of my owl lover's embrace. 2 weeks later, I learn that I'm pregnant. You may wonder, how could such a thing come to pass between woman and owl? I too am astounded because my owl lover was a woman. So that's where we start. And it's not a spoiler to say that she does have the baby, and it is an owl baby and has a lot of extra needs and a lot of chaos surrounding it, and her whole life is different after. Let me read this to you first. I'm pregnant, I say. I'm afraid to look him in the eye. I look at the floor instead. I notice the floor could use a good mopping. I start to think about mops and the way they never get anything truly clean. Next, I think about the way housekeeping is nothing more than a losing encounter with entropy. Did my husband hear what I said? Is it even true? Can I take it back? And then my husband is hugging me, not gently, but commandingly, and you could even say triumphantly. He is 11 inches taller and outweighs me by 97 pounds. My feet come right up off the floor as he spins me around. When he sets me back down, I hear Arvo Pärt's plaintive duet for violin and piano, Spiegel im Spiegel, playing in my head with all of its steady inevitability and sadness, and my life flows forward. My husband says, "Hell, wow, oh hell, we've been waiting for this baby for so long." Wait a minute, I say. I have not been waiting for this baby for so long. That is false. I'm not sure I want this baby at all. And then the next line is, my husband isn't listening. And this is something that I love so much about this book. It is this incredibly painful yet beautiful peek into what it is like when a husband and wife believe themselves to be mostly on the same page about things and very happy, even if they're maybe not exactly on the same page about things, and how one inciting event like a pregnancy and then what happens from there can have them slowly peeling apart until they don't even recognize each other. And that is a through line of this book, and it is heartbreaking and painful. And I'm not a mother and I'm not married, but I feel like I want every woman in my life to read this book. I want every person in the world to read this book. I told you I did buy it at Barnes & Noble, but then I actually called a local bookstore and bought 5 copies because I want to stick them around Chicago and put them in little free libraries because I just want this book to, I want to be assigned to write an essay on this book. I want to discuss this book. I felt it so sharply inside my soul. Let me read you another thing. As the wives toss and chop, they share stories about childbirth and menstrual woes. The wifely conversations flow in and around me. My epidural didn't take. Hell, I've never been in so much pain in my life. No way, no way, no way will I ever go for vaginal birth next time. They always warn you about the head coming through, but for me, the worst part was the way her damn shoulder kept banging against my pubic bone. My period comes up every 8 days, and it comes out in big purple clots. The potbelly never goes away. I couldn't face another pregnancy, so I got a secret abortion, and I haven't told my husband. Just after this last bit of conversation, shared by the wife who is generally known in the family as the secret aborter, a random sweaty man barges into the kitchen. I'm flooded with alarm. I seize my little grape knife and hold it at the ready, but then realize it's not a random man at all. It's the secret aborter's husband. He is incensed about the outcome of the volleyball game and in search of lemonade. He breaks the mood. He doesn't care that the mood was different to begin with because he knows that nothing important ever happens unless he is there to witness it. He drinks and then he rinses his glass, not really washing it, and goes out. What a simple paragraph that shares so much about some marriages and womanhood and the camaraderie and this dynamic that I have seen play out in my life a lot of times with various couples and people I know. So this owl baby turns this woman's life completely upside down. She is not able to work anymore. She's not able to have any friendships anymore, but she loves her baby, but it just completely rips her apart from the inside out in good ways and hard ways and bad ways. And I want everyone in the world to read this. So 5 stars, no notes, like literally no notes. Actually, tons of notes because I underlined a million things, but I could sit here and read it to you or we can move on. Read this. Okay, next up. I didn't rate this one because it's a list. 50 ways to protect bookstores. Thought it was worth a read, interesting. I learned some stuff, and it's basically a zine, so I didn't really rank it because it's 50 ways to protect bookstores with more information. So I'm just gonna move along, but I definitely think it's worth reading. I finished this book last night, and I spent half the day at work talking about it. My colleague probably hates me. If you haven't read this book, I understand. I know sometimes I see things that have won prizes and have a lot of hype, and I'm like, okay, like calm down. I'll get to you if I'm gonna. But when I tell you this book is like nothing I've ever read before, and the ways that it is like things I've read before, it's in all the best ways. The premise of this book is that you are dropped into this story where a man lives in this house, capital H, that's made up of thousands and thousands and thousands, and we don't know if it's maybe endless halls. And all these halls are filled with beautiful marble statues. And they're all depicting all kinds of different things. And he's really happy. It's in one way spoke to my love of like survival stories. There's the lower halls that are all flooded with ocean water and they have tides. And then there's the upper halls which have clouds in them. And there's weather inside this house. And this man's like fishing every day, collecting mussels, cataloging every hall of the house. He has an excellent memory. It was something I really liked about him is that he's very methodical, very logical. So you really trust him as a narrator. You're like, this guy wouldn't miss anything. And there's one other guy who lives in the house and you're learning the rules of the book, right? So you're like, okay, so we're in like a surrealist situation. Like we're in this never ending house. And there's one other guy who lives in the house called The Other, since why would you need any other name if there's only two of you? And they meet twice a week and they talk about the house. So you're dropped in, that's what you're working with, and it's beautifully described. It made me feel a lot of memories of reading The Magician's Nephew. If you liked that book, you will like this book. It's similar to that book, but it's like for adults and different. But if you have nostalgia for that story, which I do, it's the first book of the Chronicles of Narnia, if you haven't read that. And it is the prequel to The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. So if you like kind of a Narnia vibe, but like it is different, it's definitely for grown-ups, you will like this book. So he take notes of everything. He's writing everything down. And again, you're like, okay, this guy's logical. He wouldn't miss anything. And then very early on, he's like, a bunch of pages out of my notebook are missing. That's weird. And then he just like moves on and you're like, wait, what? And then also he's reading through he's like indexing everything and he's like, that's kind of weird. Like the dates of these entries are like 2011, 2012, and then it changes to like the year the albatross came into the southwestern halls. That's interesting. And then he just moves on and you're like, wait, I thought I had already made up the rules of this book in my head, and it was that we're in a surrealist kind of other world. And now you're saying that it was 2012 and you're like, okay. I'm like trying to recompute. I'm like, okay, so this is like real life. So then where is this guy? So it goes from there. So you go from being like, this guy is so trustworthy and so scientific in his thinking that he wouldn't miss anything. And then he has clearly forgotten major things and then isn't catching it. And you're like, wait, is he a reliable narrator? But I do trust him as a narrator because he's figured everything out. So there's like elements of mystery, like why did that happen? And there's a lot of other things that come up where you're like, oh wait, and you're kind of figuring it out at the same time as this main character. It spoke to me. I love survival stories. I love Narnia. It's, you know, a story of another world. I felt like the main character was so lovable and so optimistic. And I just really loved that about him. And also it reminded me, maybe this is, I don't know if this is a great touchstone, but for me, I don't read a lot of mystery. And it made me feel how I felt when I was reading Angels and Demons when I was in high school. Like Dan Brown, if you've read like the Da Vinci Code and stuff. But I remember like sitting on the couch reading that book for fun. And like the feeling I got from that mystery like was partially in this book too. So beautiful writing. A really creative premise that I had never experienced before, a bit of nostalgia for Narnia and some mystery, and I felt like it was wrapped up really well. I really liked how it ended. I felt like it was well handled. So it was so good that when I finished this last night and I laid in my bed and I put it on my chest and I looked at the ceiling and I was like, I said this out loud to the night. I was just like, I am so grateful that I live in a world with books and that I know how to read, that I was taught how to read. I'm so grateful that I have like the leisure time and safety in my life in order to spend hours just enjoying a story that somebody wrote, and that our world has the infrastructure to convey stories this way. And like, what a wonderful feeling to finish a book and feel just like grateful for your life. I just have so many emotions about this, and I got to work and my colleagues kind of get a real-time version of these videos because I'm reading them as we go. But I can't say enough good things about it. It's the Women's Prize for Fiction 2021 winner. So I have seen this all over the place. I just never got to it. And when I was in Boston last, I saw it at Trident Booksellers and I said, that's for me today. And past me knew what was up. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at in the reading journey. I'm halfway through a couple other things. I've always got several on the go. So I'm sure we'll have much more to talk about soon. I also did read almost an entire book. I DNF'd it like 25 to 50 pages toward the end. So that's how bad it was that I was like, I'm not going to finish this. So maybe one of these days I'll do a video of like all the books I didn't finish and why. But yeah. So far, so great. 4 5-star reads in the first 2 months of the year. I'm very happy with that. So I'm so excited. I hope there's more great books in my future this year. I hope you're taking care of yourself. If you like me and you're curious about what else I might be doing, I'm a singer and here's my album. So you could go listen to that. And I've got music everywhere the music is. You can join my Patreon, find my website. I'll put links And I'll see you next time, and happy reading. I hope you find lots of great books to read in the interim. Okay, bye.